All right, guys, we're live. It's Justin Stenstrom from Elite Life Podcast. And my guest today is Charles Clay, inner peace coach, dynamic speaker, and published author. Charles, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely, brother. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, same, man. It's a pleasure to have you. And I'm excited for this talk. It seems like I mentioned a moment ago, it seems like we're aligned in a lot of different things and some of our philosophies in life and some of our philosophies about health. So it's really interesting when I can chat with somebody like you and kind of get you on. It seems like you're doing some pretty cool things.
Yeah, lots of exciting things. It is a very exciting time to be alive.
So we were just talking a moment ago about and this is one of the first things that kind of struck me in our conversation because I've been diving a lot into this myself the last probably year or so, but it's like things like intuition, things like precognition, things like an awareness of what's happening around us, what's happening in our universe, how things work in terms of energy and frequency and thought and all those things. It's just been a real interesting topic for me to dive into the last year or so. Um, and you mentioned just a moment ago in our conversation before we jumped on that before 2020 came in February of 2020, before the pandemic came, um, you had an intuition from moving away from California and into Texas where you are today. Is this intuition something that occurs regularly for you? Is it something that you have these feelings or thoughts or ideas about certain things and just kind of gets downloaded into your system?
Yeah, yeah. For me, I think it can be a little different for everyone. Some people it's more of a voice. For me, it's more of a feeling. It's like a strong. I get a strong intuitive hit. It's a familiar feeling, and it's really exciting when I say yes every time. Every time we say yes to that intuitive hit, it's something opens up, some novelty. It's like the saying, when we pray, we're speaking to God. And when you're listening to your intuition, that's God speaking to you.
Ah.
So there's always, some exciting things that open up when we say yes to that. And by saying yes to that intuition, we're improving that connection to our soul, our spirit, our higher power. And so it can open up a lot of doors. It certainly has for me.
Is it something that you've always had since being a child? And also, is it something that your wife has as well? Is it that was that decision about 2020? Was that just like strictly a you thing and then she trusts your intuition, or did you both kind of come to that same
Yeah,
conclusion?
it was interesting because I remember waking up and I looked over at her and I just said, I never thought I would say this, but 18 years in California, San Diego, Encinitas, the Bay Area, and I feel totally complete with my chapter here. Like I feel like I've, overturned all the rocks and planted all the seeds and made all the connections and did all the things I came here for. And a part of me was a little worried if she was, not on that same page. And luckily, she felt the same hit, and we she's pregnant at the time with our first daughter. So our little Sophia was probably helping direct some of this too from the womb. And so it was really interesting plot twist because we're like, cool, we felt like something was going to go down. We didn't know if it was like fires or earthquake or what, but it wasn't a fear-based decision. It was more of like a, hey, let's align with our highest excitement for our next chapter and then not wait around. Like, let's make a move. So as soon as we looked into Austin, a lot of puzzle pieces started falling into place for us. I remember calling a friend of a friend, Johnny, a real estate agent here, and we hit it off. I was like, hey, we're looking to rent, but if we found the perfect house, we would buy. And he's, twiddling his thumbs like, oh, I'll find you the perfect house, and sure enough, he gives us a virtual tour and we're looking at each other like, man, that checks all the boxes. Let's go ahead and put it under contract and we'll fly out this weekend and check it out, see if it feels right. And we did. And he expedited the closing process. We bought our first house, and this is back when you could get in for under asking price in Texas. And so that opened up a lot of things. I remember we were celebrating my birthday in Cabo San Lucas while our stuff was being moved here, and it was kind of like jumping through a portal. It all happened really fast. we landed here, felt like home. The community is just incredible here. I mean, I remember my first day at work, my office, I'm looking outside and there's a neighbor from two houses up, older gentleman that's mowing my lawn. I'm like, man, I haven't even
Wow.
met this guy yet. And I go to take out the trash, and like two of the neighbors, 10 houses up, come over to greet me and say hello. There's just this like really sweet camaraderie and deep kind of Southern hospitality. Everybody kind of looks out for each other, and it's like, take no crap and do no harm, and you'll fit in well here, and so it's very welcoming. And of course that was February 2020, and then boom, the pandemic hit, and it was like we kind of looked at each other like, wow, good to be here, glad we paid attention to that, and this is the thing. And so I remember when that was going down and nobody really knew what it was yet. There was a lot of high levels of fear, getting all the news from different sources about people in hospitals are overloaded, and there's like people dying, and it's like all this turmoil in the world if you watch different news sources. And then I go to my men's group every Wednesday at Zilker Park, and I'm looking around going, man, it's sunny, everybody's playing soccer and hanging out, enjoying the sunlight, and no masks, and just having a blast. I was like, I like this reality. And so it's just interesting, when we follow our intuition, it usually leads to better things.
Yeah. So is that something that you've always had as as a child, as far back as you can remember, or is it more something that I know you had an accident at some point when you were a little older? Well, not older, but actually younger than now, but older, a young man, and you had some intuition about how you were going to heal. Is that something that you always had, or is that something that came after that accident?
Yeah, it's something that I've always had, but it is a practice. It's like every
Yeah.
time we ignore it, that it's like you'll get signs of, over and over different messages or signs that, hey, you're a little out of alignment here. You might want to make some shifts. We don't pay attention to that, then it's kind of a louder and louder call for me. And so every time I say yes to that intuition, that feeling I get, it opens up new doors, and it's improving that connection with a higher power, with my soul's calling. And that's exciting because the mind is all about the fight or flight state. We're always kind of resorting back to what we've done before because it's trying to keep us safe. So it knows like, hey, even if this is super painful, we can survive there at least. Whereas our soul, we're here for much more than survival. We're here on like the cutting edge of learning and expansion, and getting to experience contrast here in the human experience. And so I feel like that's a deep connection that we can always practice and improve more. And it's the novelty, the exciting feeling that you get, like even when you booked your trip to Spain. You get this, like, even when you hit enter and you're going, that's your soul, the electricity lighting you up, going, yes, a new experience, novelty. And then when you go, you notice you're like tapped into your higher self, right? Like all your senses are enhanced. You're, you know, dropping into more conversations with strangers. You're like way more open and to really take in all the senses of a new culture, new experiences. And that novelty is what our soul craves. That's what I believe we're here for. And so I call it vacation vibration. And it is that experience, that feeling that we can incorporate not just on vacations, but into our daily lives and into our business to allow it to be more fun and exciting and novel.
Yeah, it's there's something to that too about going on vacation. I think the way you described is actually a really good way to put it. But I've always you know, in my past where I used to help guys with confidence and dating and that type of thing, it's like there's this certain phenomena that happens when you go on vacation where it's like you might be like a shy, quiet type of guy at home, but when you go on vacation, you tend to let loose and talk to more people, and it's something about your energy when you're in a different place, a different setting, a novel setting that really ignites you, I think, and kind of brings out the best in you. And maybe a little bit has to do with that partying and a little alcohol here and there, but it's more than that. It really is. It's something about traveling to a different place and just being in a new setting that I think your soul really does crave.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, so this intuition, is it something that that other people can cultivate as well? Is it something like, do you help other people learn how to do the same type of thing that you're doing?
Yep. Absolutely. And for some people, like I said, it's different. So some people, it's a quiet voice. It's just a calling. That's like more of like a pulling you into something new, as opposed to forcing it. But oftentimes, if we're in the mind in a fight or flight state, then the mind can be pretty loud. A lot of loud voices of the ego, where it can be difficult to access that intuition. And so the first tools I teach are some really powerful self-healing tools for calming the nervous system to begin, so that you can access rest and digest, parasympathetic nervous system. And that's where you can access a lot of the magic. You're in more receptive mode, so you can receive more insights, downloads. You're in your natural state of peace, so new ideas can flow in, and especially while you're in that vacation vibration experience, because it's like your senses are enhanced, and you want to take it all in. And so it is a practice, and it is a skill that you can improve and harness, and everybody has it.
So what are the best ways for that you teach anyways to get into that parasympathetic state to relax and be ready for some of this stuff?
Absolutely. It's a great question. One of the greatest tools is right under our nose the whole time, the power of breath. And so I call it expansion breath. And it's a way of expanding in every direction as you inhale, not just anteriorly in the front, your belly, but you practice, you can feel how you can expand and breathe your side body, your backside, up, down, every direction. And this brings more of your own life force energy in, and disperses that throughout your whole being. So you get good at this, you can accomplish and reclaim your sovereign chi, I call it. And that's just fully embodying your own life force energy, just giving back any energy that doesn't serve you, that you've taken on, releasing that, grounding that, returning to sender. And that's a home base feeling for me. You do this practice enough, it's like a safety in your own body that feels really at home, and it doesn't matter where you're at. And so that can be practice, and it's a skill that you can develop. And that expansion breath is a really good place to begin with, because you get good at this breathing and expansion, then you can practice a 4-8 cadence. So it's like pranayama. You breathe in for 4 seconds, expanding in every direction like a balloon, and then you exhale nice, slow, and smooth for 8 seconds. And this has a natural calming that comes about with your nervous system. And so it can be really useful in stressful situations when you're feeling triggered. It's like the go-to tool in your Batman utility belt, for slowing things down and seeing what's happening and what's going on within your system, so that you can choose to respond instead of just reacting.
Yeah, it changes the release of neurochemicals in your brain. You'll increase the production of GABA and glycine, and you automatic like almost instantly will start to lower your cortisol, your adrenaline, epinephrine, things like that. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Like you said, it's a tool that you have at all times, at your disposal at all times, which is pretty cool. Like in stressful situations, if you're worried, if you're, you know, thinking about something, if you're afraid, like you're getting into that fight or flight state, it's like within a couple of minutes you can just instantly tap out of it and get back to a normal state of functioning. It's great.
Absolutely. And to add on to that, it's like when you're dealing with challenges, or you feel triggered, or you're just experiencing some, chaotic energy, then, if it's anxiety or even grief, whatever you're dealing with, this is a great tool to receive some answers, right? So the mind can instantly go into old negative default programs and patterns of like worst case scenario. That's like when you're back hurts, and your first response reaction is like, well, I'll go on Google and self-diagnose, and then that puts you down a rabbit hole of like all the worst case scenarios, and, and can cause
Yeah.
even more, compound the fight or flight state. Whereas if you use that 4-8 expansion breath, and then you begin to give your mind a simple task, and it becomes like, instead of those default negative patterns, it's giving it, it's called your reticular activation system. This has actually been proven science. It's a really cool filtering system in your mind. And reticular, meaning retina, your lens at which you see your reality through, is activated to that which is important to you, right? And so this phenomenon is happening all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. It's like you see the new blue SUV Tesla, and you're like, oh, I want to be the only guy on the road with that car, right? And then as soon as you have an interest in it, your reticular activation set to that. Now you start seeing them all over the
Yeah.
place, right? Driving one next to you, you see it in magazine, these kind of things. And so what's cool is knowing how this phenomenon works, you can use it to your advantage, because the opposite's true as well. You wake up, you have you didn't get a good night's sleep, you declare to yourself, even just thinking like, oh man, I only got a couple hours, it's going to be a rough day, right? As soon as you declare that, you've just set unintentionally your reticular activation system to seeking evidence of it being a rough day, and the universe will provide, right? Like you stub your toe getting out of bed, you're spilling your coffee, you're ungrounded, someone's stealing your parking spot, and these things keep ensuing. So instead, you can set that reticular activation with the power of intention. And so when you're in a challenging state, you can use your expansion breath, and then begin some self inquiry. And this is really powerful for giving your mind that task to seek some answers that can be helpful. And so I offer, 3 really simple but powerful questions, self inquiry. When you're experiencing pain, that's a sign to pay attention inward now. So, one of the questions you can begin with is, how is this happening for me? And that's an important question, because it takes us out of that victim fight or flight mode. If we know it's happening for us, then it's like, cool, what are we to learn from this? And so the second question is, what are the lessons and the blessings that I'm to gain through this challenge? Because you can look back through your track record your entire life and see that you've gained some deep wisdom, some shifts in your life, and some huge growth from your challenges and your hardest, initiations. And so knowing that, you can ask these questions. And then the third one is, what wants to change? And that's the one where you'll usually get some answers from your intuition. It might be, oh man, I really need to spend less time on these screens, or Instagram, giving all my attention and energy to these things that aren't really worthy, and then wondering why business isn't working well. Right? It's like you'll get that intuitive hit. It's like your mind's set to finding the answers to this, and they might not come instantaneously, but eventually you'll get some signs and some hits, and that's where you can, it's an opportunity to honor that intuition and be like, okay, I'm going to set myself up for success, cut out these distractions, set, a week without, getting on my phone before the first hour of, my day, right? That could be one example of a commitment, an agreement that we set. And now a lot of people fail on these commitments, especially the New Year's resolutionists. It's like, you know, when we have audacious goals of like, I'm getting fat, so I'm just going to cut out sugar for the whole year. And that's, great intention, but the follow up is really difficult for that, right? It's like, go into about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something hard you're going through, and it's like Labrador brains going right for the cookies again, right? And we kind of sweep that under the rug, thinking it's no big deal, but it is a really big deal. This is a lot of what I teach, because every time, I bet you're like me, you say you're going to show up for an appointment or help a friend out with a move. I'll be there on Saturday at 1 p.m. We're pretty good about showing up for other people. But it's those little agreements and commitments that we make with ourselves that oftentimes we're slipping. And what we don't realize is the impact of that. The impact of not holding those agreements and those commitments is actually chipping away at our self trust, our integrity, and our confidence. And so that can increase the volume of that voice of self doubt in the mind. If we don't have a good track record of showing up and finishing our agreements and our commitments. So the flip side of that, the good news is you're really smart about it. I teach a whole system that helps people with addictions, and it's all about creating smart agreements and commitments that are chunked into, it might be, let's go 3 days of, no phone before 10 a.m., right? And knowing that your self trust, your integrity, and your confidence is on the line, you can put a little more effort into that and know that, hey, I can make this 3 days, right? So making sure it's attainable. And after that 3 days, notice, take a little inventory and check in with, wow, I feel like I've got more done. I'm more productive. I'm putting my energy into what is important, right? And so then you might want to double down. Cool. Now I feel like I'm confident I can go a whole week, right? And each time, what's important is every time you get a small win or a big win, you accomplish those agreements, to reinforce that with what I call healthy rewards, healthy celebrations. And this is different than you get a promotion and you go out, have tequila shots and celebrate with a big king and queen size dinner and dessert and all the things. That's great. There's a time and a place for that. I'm not knocking that, but there are a whole plethora of really fun, exciting, and even relaxing rewards that you can create for yourself that allow you to tap into the same dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin that you would get from the sugar cookie, right? And then you get good at this process and you become really good at self sourcing. And so you're doing the things that light you up more. You're doing more of these healthy rewards. It's rewiring your brain to good habits to the point where over a few months you can ingrain these so well it becomes like brushing your teeth. And then you go to show up for something big, writing that book or showing up on stage for, your TED Talk, or even just doing an event. You can quiet the voice of self-doubt and know that once you say, I'm going to show up for this, it's as good as done, because you have a good track record and you've built that self-trust. And that's what can make people really powerful in showing up in a big way, making a big impact in people's lives. And what's cool about that whole system is that I've helped a lot of people release their attachments and even the magnetism towards the addictions, whether it's coffee or the sugar or smoking, drinking. When you get good at this system and self sourcing, then you don't need to reach for the external things as much. It's like you're getting these, it's like a gas station. You keep hitting these things that feel really good. And I, help co-create with people a giant list with different categories. And you got like the yin, the relaxive, restorative, healthy rewards, right? And then on the other end, you got the yang, which is like the active, fun things that light you up, bike rides, cliff jumping, things that are really fun and evoke those natural neurotransmitters and endorphins in your body. And then there's a middle category, which is like the flow state. And this is that sweet spot between discipline and surrender. It's really exciting because this is like, if you like to sing, if you like to play the guitar or an instrument, I have a handpan I play, and choosing those as healthy rewards, or even from the inside, like a massage, or if meditation feels really good for people, that could be, or writing, right? These type of healthy rewards are helping you tap in to those natural feel good chemical releases within your body, and it becomes really easy to let go of the things that you used to have to rely on, the coping mechanisms externally. And it's a very powerful system, and it's helped a lot of people move through their addictions and feel and heal what's at the bottom of that. There's usually some emotional baggage. I call it emotional constipation that's usually getting pointed to when it comes to any type of addiction.
Yeah. And I'm sure it has a lot to do with, emotional constipation. It sounds like it's blocking a lot of the energy that could be otherwise expressed in people's lives. And it sounds like I got a friend too, Craig Ballantyne. I don't know if you've heard of his name before, but he's pretty smart guy, but very successful business guy. But he's very much about discipline. And he talks about how I think that his nickname is like the most disciplined guy in the world or something. I think it's a self-created nickname, but he is very extremely disciplined and a great guy. But he talks about how being disciplined actually frees up his life. So being it's counterintuitive, but being more disciplined actually allows more freedom in his life. And it kind of sounds like what we're talking about here as far as keeping your promises, doing the things, that you say you're going to do for yourself, especially because then once you get those things done, you trust yourself more, you're able to commit, you're able to follow through on things and be dedicated to what you want to actually achieve. And then of course that goes outward and then other things. It's a lot easier actually to be committed to other things when you're committed to yourself first, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you're getting good at self-sourcing and filling your own cup. And that way it's so much easier to show up and support others from that place. We see too many people running around with empty cups, low energy, trying to help and change the world and help other people. It's like, well, let's, what is it that you need that can fill your cup, that's a gas station for you, that then you can show up in a big way for others. It's that same analogy they use on the flight. You go on an airplane to Spain, they're
Yeah.
like, hey, use your oxygen mask on yourself first before you're putting it on your loved ones. And so when we get good at that, it's powerful. You can show up in a big way. And what Craig, his system is great because discipline's really important. And it when you create that structure and you have these pillars, throughout your day that you can rely on, that you get consistency, that you get down, and that allows for upgrades in your productivity and your level of focus, then this can open up more free time, right? Which then allows we'll call it the feminine energy. We each have both, right? So and it's like, cool, I have the structure, I wake up, this is my morning routine, it feels good, then my cup's full, then I create from that place much different quality of energy than waking up with the reticular activation set to it's going to be a rough day. Like showing up from that place, totally different energy. And so having both, like some structure and then allowing for some flexibility and some freedom and some of those gas stations throughout your day, those healthy celebrations and wins that you get to celebrate, could even be like, you crush a podcast or a good, you check something off your get to do list. You did an administrative task. Then it's like, take 2 minutes, pick something off of your healthy rewards celebration list, and maybe put on your favorite song and let your body move and dance, and for a minute or two. And this charges you up. It's one of those feel good, natural ways of getting high on your own supply that then fills your cup. Then you move on to the next task. You have so much more energy, focus, and attention you can put into that. And that rewires the brain in a beautiful way to more of those healthy habits. Is becoming, pretty effortless.
Yeah. Where does the ego fit into all this? Does the ego like the fact that you're not going out and, you know, doing things like getting drunk or watching porn or like I'm thinking of some or doing cocaine, like drugs, like recreational drugs like that. Like I'm thinking some of the major dopamine hits that your ego tends to love. Instead of doing those, you're replacing them with more natural, healthier ones. Does the ego like this new conditioned you, or does it actually prefer the old one? And is it a bit of a internal battle between you and the ego?
Yeah, it can be. It's everybody's journey is a little different, but just a broad bird's eye perspective. I used to battle with ego, and it's pretty sneaky sometimes, right? But anytime it's like that loud voice that's trying to bring you back to where you've been before, familiarity, even if that's painful or suffering or struggling, but it's a survival state. That's and the ego doing its job, right? It's here to make sure we survive. And so I look at it as it's our ego is like a nice little safety tour guide on this journey of human experience, And so the tour guide's always going to be like, safety first, no, don't get too close to the edge, and stick with what we already know and that we've done before, right? But we know, our soul is here for expansion. and learning and like, experiencing new things, the novelty. And so that allows us to dance through some fears and see what's on the other side. And then your ego will have a heyday. It's like if you're on the edge of the cliff, all your friends have jumped in the water and they're laughing and smiling, and you're still taking your time and decided not to jump yet. When you get in your head, it's like the ego will talk to tell you like a million different reasons not to do that jump, not to take that leap. It's not safe. Like, freak out. And the longer you wait, the harder it gets, right? You get more and more in your head about it. Whereas if you just go up to that edge and you just trust and you just take the leap and take the jump, even though you've never done it before, that's your soul's inspiration. The soul's like, safety third. Let's go. We're here for the magic. We're here for the mystery. We're here for the exploration. And so that's why I love incorporating vacation vibration into everyday life, because you can create more novel experiences. And that might even look like going to the same cafe that you've been to 100 times. But what if you just pause, take a couple rounds of that 4-8 expansion breath, and allow yourself to elevate your state? You can do this with gratitude. Think of a couple of things you're feeling grateful for. Notice how that ups your amplitude of your feelings and sensations a little more, and then you combine that with a crystal clear intention. And it could be, I want to experience some more love and connection, right? In this, as I go through these doors into this cafe that I've been to a million times. So instead of going in there like Groundhog Day, where subconscious takes over, you're just order the same thing, say, hey, how you doing? Now you actually have more presence. You've set your reticular activation to, I want to give love and experience more connection. So when you ask how the barista's doing, you actually are like present to listen and hear her experience. And, it might allow for a really interesting conversation to ensue. And then somebody else chimes in. And before you know it, you've made some new friends. And I find, as a side effect of this practice, if anything, you end up getting a lot of free stuff because you're seeing through a lens of unconditional love and bringing more of your presence to these interactions. And so really cool things ensue. And I've even taken this to the extreme, the closest place to hell that I've been to, where most people say that is
No.
the DMV.
Oh yeah.
Right? You got to get your license renewed. So when I went to the DMV or when I go to hospitals,
Worst
right?
in hell.
Yeah, it's so easy to succumb subconsciously to the energy of these low vibration buildings and these rooms where it's just like such a drag to be in there. You look around, it's like zombies hanging out, waiting for their number to be turned. Not me. I decide in my car before I even go in, I'm going to set my intention to having some fun and sharing some smiles and some laughs in the closest place to hell. Why not? So then I go in there, get my number, sit down, drop into a meditation, and I see then the guy next to me has a knee brace on, young guy, and I was like, man, what happened? You kicking too much butt, or what happened with your knee? He goes, no, I wish ACL injury, and we got to talking, and I was like, well, have you ever tried meditation for healing? And he's like, no. I said, yeah, I can share the same one that I use to help heal my back naturally instead of getting surgery, and shared a little tidbit with him, meditation for him to try. And uh, then, a couple other people start chiming in about sharing about their journey and their injuries. And before you know it, we're sharing some laughs together. The woman calls my number. Feels like time just flew by. I go up there and I'm like, oh my goddess, I'm so excited to see you. Do you know how long I've been waiting? And she looks at me like, no, what, how long? I was like, I pointed to my watch at the time. I just had a watch that just said now. And it was the first time I'd seen anybody that works at the DMV laugh. And so we shared this laugh. She brought some of the other girls over to see this watch. And I looked around and it was literally like watching domino effect, like a ripple effect of just some joy, some that raised the vibration, and like a little party going on in the DMV. I got to share a laugh with like 8 people in there. And so it became this really cool, novel, fun experience in the worst place because I set that intention. turned on my reticular activation to what's possible, brought that vacation vibration into, I highly recommend it for hospitals too. Before you go in there, you can go in there like Patch Adams instead of just being a zombie succumbing to the low frequencies of those type of places. So it's a game changer.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I really do I like that. The only thing I would say is what happens when someone isn't on your level. Yeah, like you go in there with the good intention, and especially up here in New England, man. I mean, you probably have heard some stories, but the people around here aren't the friendliest in the world, although they can be. You just like, I think it takes a little more work to open them up here, but they can
Yeah.
be. But so what happens though if you go in with that intention, and how do you deal with somebody who isn't on your level? They just they almost will attack you in some way, like even just not physically attack you or even necessarily like verbally attack you, but as far as their energy, like their energy is attacking your energy. How do you deal with that type of person to continue on with that good intention and not let it affect you?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways, but that's a common one, especially we've seen this day and age, right? If you're, you know, one-sided on an opinion about something and you share that, boy, it's like
Oh yeah.
you get people, that are on the other end of the fence that are trying to poke holes in that and create, and that anytime that's going on, and you dive in and engage in that of like the who's right, who's wrong battles, that's all ego.
Yeah.
And there's that saying, you can be right or you can be happy. And I always choose unconditional happiness. And so what that it looks like is it's just enjoying where someone's at. If they're triggered because I'm having a good time in the DMV or I say something that offends them, then if we're going to be there for a while, then I'm open to hearing their perspective on it. But having a broad sense of like zooming out and just recognizing the brainwashing that's been going on for so long about needing to choose a side. Right? Like, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? Are you on the blue team, the red team? Are you, pro vax or no vax? And notice how that need to choose a side is what creates these ego battles, right? What if there's another choice that, hey, I'm neither. I actually am just like being on Team Earth and we're all on this rock together floating through space, and I'm open to diverse perspectives and somebody that's truth is so far from mine that I find that interesting, and I'm open. So if I have time, I've just asked them, that's interesting, tell me more about how you came to that conclusion, and so that allows an understanding and an acceptance of like, wow, that truth is as far from mine, and you can still appreciate this diverse perspective that's so far from what you believe is true, and that brings value. Imagine if there wasn't that level of diversity perspectives. It'd be a pretty boring existence, right? So if that's going to stir up some arguments and trigger some people, so be it. And when I get triggered and it's my turn and someone's able to piss me off, like I find it fascinating. I'll use my 4-8 expansion breath and like tune into, wow, where's this showing up? Oh, solar plexus. So this is right in my power center. And where have I been giving my power away? And what is this feeling, this sensation uh, telling me? Right? It's like where it shows up in your body gives us clues. And so the triggers are always gateways to deeper healing and revealing of lessons and blessings for ourselves. And so now it's like I have more of a lens of curiosity around that instead of just the overreacting and diving into the ego battles back and forth. And I'm not perfect. It's not all the time, but when my cup's full, I'm happy to engage in those conversations and experience some diverse perspectives. But I'm not the type that spends much time online, trolling for people looking for, I'm too busy creating, an experience in the life that I want to experience. I appreciate the contrast because just like the organizations that are obviously not in business for the greatest and highest good for all. I don't think we even need to name too many of those, but um, we all are very aware, I think, now of those organizations. And sitting and yelling and arguing and complaining about those organizations is actually like putting fuel in your energy on the fire. And so instead, cool, thank you for the contrast, showing us what doesn't work well. Now we can get busy working on something that does work better and create something better. And then, just like you see in nature, it's like a flock of birds. It looks like the bird in the front of the V is the leader, but it's actually they're all working as a unit. It's like the 51 percentile. Oh, we're going to go north now. And they swoop. You see it in schools of fish, like really rapid pace. It's really amusing to witness. And it's the same thing that can happen for humanity. Enough people take their attention off of what isn't working and put it towards what can work and building something that does a better system that is based on the highest and greatest good for all, that can benefit more people, that including Mother Earth. Then there's that 51 percentile, and eventually it's like more and more people see, oh wow, that works well, let's do that instead. And then it grows faster, and the old paradigm, the old organizations that were built on greed and power begin to fall at a rapid pace. And I think we're seeing that, some different rates right now throughout our experience. And just like with the pandemic, I think that was a really important hit. And I always look the same thing, like, how is this happening for us? And one of the things, intuitive hits I got was, wow, this is important to really get clear on where you're sourcing your information from, because it became apparent that there were a lot of bad sources that were sharing some data that wasn't necessarily true, or some scientific research that might have been funded by some people with that were involved in that and had some profits going their way. And so getting good at sourcing your information of what feels true and intuitive to you. And to me, that's like recognizing what isn't good sources so that we can begin to connect with a greater source. And to me, that's, the power that's much greater than us, the creator that moves and is within each of us. That's my greatest source, and connecting to my higher self. And I trust that so much more than Google and diagnosing, on CNN. And that's my way. And I am totally accepting of other people's way too. But I think that's one of many reasons that this has been happening for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just we got to wrap things up in just a moment, but real quickly, the higher self, I guess that's the thing that kind of jumps out the most. When you refer to your higher self, can you explain that? Because we talked about ego, which I think is kind of the opposite of the higher self, right? Can you just explain what the higher self means to you, if it's actually a part of us, if it's, a different sort of entity coming into play and becoming, helping, guiding us like when you think of higher self, and because I've been hearing higher self a lot lately, last few months, what does it mean to you exactly, and how do you use it in your life?
Yeah. So for me, I do a lot of visioneering. So it's um, visioneering is like engineering your future while in the present, and allowing myself to feel in every cell of my body that experience already. And so for me, that's easy for me to access that higher self connection. It's like a wise, sage, older, future version of myself, right? That knows a lot more than my current self's experience, right? And so we can we don't need to go too into depth on the multidimensionalism and all that, but we say future self, but it's not this linear aspect. It's just a version of us that is much wiser, right? And so when you get good at this practice, then you can access that version more consistently and actually embody that more consistently. And the beauty of that is that, like, you imagine you're driving your RV with your family in the background and you're going on a trip, and you start out your higher self's driving, but then all these personas and characters of our ego, these voices chime in, right? Like the Pac-Man, I call him. He's like the over consumer part of me that's like, oh, turn the wheel. There's a In and Out burger or whatever, right? Or it can be the old uncle that's like drinking too much, right? In the back that is just getting on everybody's nerves, right? This can be an analogy of some of those voices in your head. And so when we try to shut those out, that would be the equivalent of like pulling over, kicking your Uncle Biff out because he's too drunk and everybody voted him off the RV. And then you keep going on your trip. But the problem is, you still got this uncle that's now drunk in public. He ends up getting arrested. He's in jail. And then you got to turn back around and go, bail him out, right? That's the same thing for these egoic voices in our head. They're like protectors, right? That come online to share a lot of talk. There's so many different voices, and this is a way of integrating, get to knowing these parts. And so the more you have awareness of that and can interact with these voices, then it's easier to differentiate the higher self and the intuitive voice, right? And the beauty of that is that then on a more consistent basis, your higher self's driving and you're making better decisions from a peaceful state instead of a lot of decisions made from a fight or flight state, which then creates more stressful and frightful situations.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize it and wrap things up. It was a fascinating conversation. I don't think there's anything you said I disagree with this whole episode. Like we're really even more aligned than I thought we were, which is pretty cool, man. Like it's awesome. But yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you, man. What's the last send off takeaway message you'd like to leave the Elite Life audience and a place our listeners can check out your work?
Yeah. One initiation I had early on, Charles 1.0, trying to do it all myself, trying to be the, solopreneur. I was always happy to share and help others, but then when it came from my stuff and getting hit and triggered, I would run off to the back cave, try to do it myself. That is a low or slow process of evolution. There's an easier way. And so it's just having the courage to reach out for support and even listening to your intuition with that. You'll get a hit from people that you get a feeling or a sensation or an expansive notion towards reaching out to and connecting with to help support you on your journey. And so that we're all in this together. So when you get that intuitive hit, say yes to it. And every time you do, you're improving that connection with your soul, your higher self. And it'll open up amazing things for you when you call in that level of support. So that's something I wish someone would have told me through that, a decade ago. And people want to find out more about my work and the inner peace process. Check out charlesclay.coach. There's a laser focus method there too for producing more and creating more than you consume. And it's a game changer for up leveling your focus to Jedi level and creating more of your God given gifts, talents, and passions in the world so that we can die happy instead of having deathbed regrets. And yeah, charlesclay.coach. There's even a free gift. When you scroll to the bottom and join our newsletter, you'll get a free 22-minute guided alignment activation. And this is an experience of a sequence of movement, breath work, and meditation that allows you to feel what I was talking about earlier with that reclaiming your sovereignty. And so it's amazing for good morning rituals. It's great for when you're feeling stuck or your energy's off. Try that out. Let me know how it goes and feel free to connect and reach out. For those that are on Instagram, it's charlesclay.coach. Shoot me a DM. Always happy to connect and support and share more of these gems and this type of work. It's truly a gift and an honor.
Thanks, Charles. Great interview, man. Really do appreciate you coming on and sharing that information with our guys. And I know they're going to love this one. So take care. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.